Okay, hello everybody. Here we are for the presentation about Broom. So I'm just going to bring up my PowerPoint presentation and I'll talk us through the significance of today, and we'll look at some of the medicine and lore of the Broom. So the flower Broom is not really a tree as such, it's more of a shrub, but it can grow up to at least 8 foot high. It can become quite a substantial shrub, if you like. But its lore is mainly to do with the summer goddess in Celtic mythology and very important star lore to do with the Holy Grail. So I call her Broom, I call her the Grail Maiden. And just a week ago, I recorded a video and put it on YouTube. So you can look on the YouTube channel for the Ogham Grove, and there is a video for the Holy Grail. And it explains the star lore behind it. And it's significant to this presentation because the Days of Broom, the next 18 days, correspond with the constellation of the Holy Grail. So the Broom Maiden holds the Grail. It's part of her position in the year, if you like. And I'll show that with some diagrams further on. So Broom, today, this photograph, today is the very day where we transition from the days of Ivy into the days of Broom. And that transition point is the 15th degree of Leo. In Celtic terminology, that's the exact moment of Lunasa, the Celtic fire festival. Lunasa is the midpoint between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. So not saying the Celts observe the zodiac signs as such, but we can say 15th degree of Leo, just to be precise about the midpoint between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. So in this diagram, in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the position of Lunasa, the festival of Lu, the young heroic god of the Irish pantheon. And it's positioned between Ivy and Broom. I would argue that this is a special time of year when there was a kind of like harvest festivals, people coming together, helping to bring in the crops and store the crops for the winter time. And that kind of social activity was also the high end of summer and a way for young people to meet each other and find a boyfriend, find a girlfriend, and all that kind of thing. These became very important festivals. And in a bardic mystery tradition, it's also the beginning of a major rite of passage. I'll talk about that more in the video for Blackthorn in a few weeks' time. But this is the time of year when Ceridwen consumes Gwion back and carries him inside her for 9 months, pregnancy duration, and he's born at Beltane. So the importance of Beltane being 9 months after Lunasa makes Lunasa this sacred marriage with this honeymoon night when, the king sleeps with his sovereignty goddess and that kind of thing. So the position of Broom in this diagram, I hope you can see it because for me there's thumbnails of speakers there. But after Lunasa, so today is Lunasa astrologically, and then for the next 18 days or so, it's the days of Broom. And Broom will take us through the rest of Leo, the lion. So it's about 15 days of Leo, and then into the first few days of Virgo. So she's the she's leonine in her nature. She has golden hair, the color of broom, but she finishes with her foot on Virgo. Now, in the Ogham Grove and in the ancient mystery traditions, Virgo was the goddess of the mysteries, and the cusp between Leo and Virgo is the starting point for descending into the mysteries in the ancient world, you know, whether it's the Eleusinian mysteries or Mithraic mysteries or the rites of Demeter and Persephone and Ceres and so on. So the Welsh bards with Ceridwen were continuing or adapting beginning of mystery trainings, which would conclude with a radiant brow at Beltane. So this is the time for going into 9 months of initiation, if you like, or you don't have to, but that's kind of the pattern of the year. You can sit back and just watch it unfold, you know, but that's the story that the sun is doing as it goes through the rest of the trees of the Ogham Grove and the rest of the zodiac. So a recurring thing of importance is this cusp between Leo and Virgo, and that is held by Broom. And Broom is the maiden aspect of the triple goddess of the Ogham Grove, the Virgo being the mother figure and Elder being the grandmother. So a fascinating time. This diagram here shows you the sign of Virgo, and you can see how Broom, Blackthorn and Elder all sit or have a foot on Virgo. You know, so the zodiac signs are 30 degrees wide and the trees are 18 degrees wide. So here and there you can get 3 trees touching one zodiac sign, and that happens with Virgo. Traditionally, Virgo always was the kind of queen of the heavens or queen of the zodiac. And yeah, she's the cereal goddess at the harvest time. And it's after gathering everything together in the harvests and the celebrations of that the seeds are then put into the deep, dark soil to gestate throughout the winter time for the new spring and so on. So that kind of seasonal pattern of going into the dark to gestate before rebirth was what the mystery traditions worked with sympathetically. You know, that was a time for initiates to go into the dark, you know, the studies and grow, and their inner self would gradually bloom come the spring and so on. So these kind of rites of initiation coincide with the elder tree being the autumn equinox, and that being the moment of descending into the mysteries, when they're, so that the old self has to die for a rebirth as an initiated one. So Virgo is playing that out in a kind of 3-faced way. So there's the 3 female figures holding that Virgo position, you know. Now, Virgo traditionally is governed by the planet Mercury. The number that goes with the planet Mercury is 3. So it's perfectly natural for Virgo to be divided into 3 in this way. Just the patterns of Mercury work that way. So along with, you can see here along the bottom, it says Leo, Virgo, Libra. Each zodiac sign has 30 degrees. But the trees, because there's 20 of them, they have only 18 degrees. So this is how they fit alongside the zodiac. But also with Leo and Virgo, there are other constellations. You know, the zodiac is just the circumference of the heavenly realm. There's lots of constellations inside that circumference. So along with Leo, which is shown here as a lion, there's a very, very important constellation called Crater, the wine mixing cup. And I'll refer you back to the Holy Grail video I put up on YouTube a week ago. So you can look at that to get more details about it. But simplistically, in zodiacal law, Leo governs the heart. Aries governs the head, Scorpio the genitals, and so on. So each zodiac sign governs a different part of the body. But Leo governs the heart, and its secondary constellation is this wine mixing bowl, which was used in the ancient mystery traditions and then inherited by the Arthurian romances in the medieval days. But the point is that the heavenly chalice, the heavenly bowl, is with Leo governing the heart. So it's there in your heart. It actually corresponds then with the middle cauldron. So the Celts had this system of 3 cauldrons. And Broom is the personification of the divine feminine that holds the Grail within you, within your middle cauldron. You know, that's how important it is. And it's really interesting that, you know, we're going to have our first Ogham growth gathering next weekend during the Days of Broom, during the stars aligning with one's middle cauldron, and all of that is a lovely synchronistic serendipity and stuff. So what we're looking at with Broom then is this Grail maiden who is mostly Leo the lion. She's mostly of the heart, and she has just 3 degrees on Virgo. So she's the young maiden of the triple Virgo goddess. In another project I've been involved in called the Well Maidens of the Summerlands, I've created an oracle deck which should be published by Christmas, hopefully. It's taken a long time. It's taken nearly 8 years to get this thing published, you know, which is a whole Venus cycle, of course. But for the Leo part of this oracle deck, that it's given to an Arthurian woman, and this one is Igraine. Igraine is the mother of King Arthur in the stories. But that aside, the first image is Broom, even though Broom's not depicted. In the regular tarot, the major arcana, this is the card of strength. And strength should always depict a maiden and a lion, you know, and that's Virgo and Leo. So that strength card represents this moment in time where Leo the lion and the maiden are side by side, if you like. This is that gateway. And that was, like I said earlier, it's a starting point for the ancient mystery traditions of learning to know thyself and experience self-gnosis of one's eternal self and so on. That was the whole point of the mystery traditions, was to help people connect with their eternal spirit. The second image is also for Igraine, and I've given her here the wine mixing cup, you know, with Crater, the constellation. So it's very deliberate. And the rose is there, of course, for Venus, but equally Broom is part of the rose family, even though it's not part of the pentagram or for it. Has an interesting polarity, Broom, with the alder tree. The alder tree is the story of Bran and Branwen in the Mabinogion. And of course, the main hidden mystery in their story is the cauldron of renewal. And so it's directly opposite Broom and the heavenly cauldron, Crater, the wine mixing cup. And in other, it kind of establishes that the constellation is the cauldron for the Celtic stories, and it fits perfectly, brilliantly with the mythology of Ceridwen and her cauldron. And I touch on that on the previously mentioned video, and we'll also look at that in more detail in the Days of Blackthorn when we're into Virgo properly. because blackthorn's the only tree completely Virgo. Broom is mostly Leo with a little bit of Virgo. So she's this golden-haired goddess of the summertime, you know, the beautiful Grail maiden. In a lot of Celtic stories, the goddess is usually described as having hair the color of broom, as golden as the broom and stuff, and that's a recurring thing. Tomorrow I'll put some literature on the Facebook group kind of showing that, but it's there in a way with Rhiannon, it's there with Olwen and Ellen, this shining golden thing, and broom is representing that golden hair of the beautiful Grail maiden. Once you start to understand the star law, significance of different times of the year, you can start to decode ancient iconography. And here's an example, but you have to be prepared for it, you know. So if you just see this for the first time, you're not really prepared for it zodiac wise and mystery school wise. But here you have the Gallic god Canunus, and curiously he's pouring grain out of his sack. Now, some academics have said it's coins, money that he's pouring out, but there's a rat at the top, and so most people go with the idea that he's pouring grain out, feeding grain endlessly, and it's tempting the rat sort of above. But he's flanked between Apollo with his lyre, his harp, and Mercury with his caduceus, the staff with the twin serpents. Now, very, very simplistically, there is only one place in the whole zodiac wheel, the wheel of the sun as it does its annual journey, where Apollo and Mercury are side by side. You know, so Apollo is the sun, and Leo is the only zodiac sign governed by the sun. And Mercury governs both Gemini and Virgo, but it's the Leo-Virgo cusp. It's the Sun-Mercury cusp, and that's the Days of Broom. Even though Broom's not depicted here, it's actually showing Canunus as a figurehead with grain at harvest time, at the time when things would descend into the mysteries. You know, it's quite interesting. So it's just an example of, once you've got a bit of basic star lore in your head, you can start understanding symbolism in old iconography. I would go out on a limb, I can't prove it, but I would say that Canunus is a consort of the sovereignty goddess. And so he's representing the winter aspect with antlers at harvest time as a consort of the goddess going into the winter time, sort of thing. It's that kind of seasonal cycle, whereas the opposite time of year would be bull's horns for Taurus and so on. So like the antlers are winter, the bull's horns are summer. So, but most famously in Welsh mythology, Broom is remembered with the story of the flower goddess Blodeuwedd. There's a from a bardic story in the Mabinogion, you know, for another Lugh sun god, but in this story he's called Llai, but he's a sun god being raised by Gwydion, the god of magic. And a curse is put upon the young sun god that he shall not have a wife of the race that inhabits the earth. So the wizard god creates a bride for him. Famously, she's made of the flowers of oak, broom, and meadowsweet. So it's a deliberate mention of broom, that broom is one of three main ingredients of this flower goddess, and meadowsweet, which we'll look at further on. I've resonated with that whole story for quite a long time, so I've done a lot of artwork of Blodeuwedd, and her story is that originally she was Blodeuwedd, which means flowers because of the flowers that she was made of. But at the end of the story, she's met the Winter King, the god of the other world, you know, chasing the deer, which is the symbol of the antlers, and she's not interested in the Summer King anymore, you know, and they conspire to get rid of the Summer King. That's the seasonal story of it. And they do get rid of the Summer King because she falls desperately in love with the Winter King. It's just Mother Nature and Winter King, Summer King kind of clock. But as punishment for doing away with the Summer King, the Wizard of Magic turns her into an owl to live in the darkness forever, to live in the twilight. That's her punishment. But I would suggest this is a garbled memory of older mystery school teachings. And the main kind of goddess in Britain in Roman times was Minerva, and Minerva's main image totem was the owl. And that can also correspond with all Venus goddesses, like Ishtar is Ishtar is depicted with owls, because the owl is a twilight creature, and so is Venus, because Venus is sometimes the morning star, sometimes the evening star, but she's a twilight star. You know, it's a very fairy, very, very liminal, very between the worlds, neither day nor night, but that twilight in between. So the Welsh bards did a play on words, a kind of a bardic game, and it's very subtle. So when she was first created as a flower goddess, her name was Blodeuwedd, which means flowers. That's all it means. And then when Gwydion curses her to be an owl, he calls her Blodeuwedd with a W, Blodeuwedd. And that means flower face, a nod to the barn owl having a beautiful flower-like face, you know. So she is on, simplistically, you could say that in the spring and summer, she's the flower maiden. And in the autumn and winter, she becomes the twilight owl, the symbol of the twilight zone in the other world, you know. So a fascinating character. My dad did a book that incorporated all of the trees of the Ogham, and I did this drawing for Broom. And if you look at on the right-hand side, you can see how fastidious I was. Her skin is made of lots of tiny little flowers. So there's a kind of suggestion of an owl in her face, but this is the Blodeuwedd, the flowers, rather than Blodeuwedd, the flower face. Complexities. So for me, Broom, this is my broom stake, and I'll be using it on the coming weekend. We're going to use my stakes for the very first time and make a sacred circle that we'll do something in on the Sunday. So I've had my stakes for a while and I've taken them to interesting places, but I've never actually used them for the intention that I originally had, which was a bit like tent pegs to push them into the ground to make a sacred circle. I've been carrying them around for a couple of years, but have never used them. I've never pushed them in the ground. This is my broom at the Roman amphitheatre in Caerleon in South Wales. You know, so I've carried them around, usually depending on what time of the year is. I've usually got a few in my bag just as traveling companions. But what happened was last weekend, there was the annual Goddess Conference in Glastonbury, and I was asked if I could lend an Ogham set to some priestesses to do a sacred grove thing. And I was asked a few months ago, and I said, yeah, all right. And I thought I'd knock up a quick set for them, just a basic set. And the months went by, and I didn't. I ran out of time. And then I thought, oh, all I can do is lend them my own set. And I really didn't want to. I was kind of, oh, I don't want to. And in the end, I thought, no, just trust the process. And in the end, it turned out quite brilliant. And the whole set was used last Thursday evening for a woodland shamanic journey thing that people did, but they didn't push them in the ground. They were just laid out on a circular carpet and they kind of did their ceremony around it. But in a way, it felt like the stakes had been blessed by the priestesses of Avalon, the priestesses of Glastonbury, for the following weekend, which is the coming weekend. So I'm really quite happy about that now. It's like they've been given a blessing before we use them in the landscape. Anyway, down to the medicine of the broom. The broom itself is forgotten its Latin name, but it's also known as Scotch broom. It's quite different to gorse, although they look quite similar from a distance. Gorse is very spiky, and broom is very soft to touch. And it's long, thin, bendy, pliable stems that when you gather the stems and let them dry, you can use them literally to make a besom, a broomstick, you know. So this is the original thin twigs that was used to make broomsticks, hence its common name of broom as well. So on one hand, you could think of that clearing away energy, clearing away the old before going into the mysteries. Medicinally then, the flowers are used medicinally, and they have benefits. Curiously, primarily it's a diuretic, so it's good for detoxing the body, but too much of it can make people nauseous and vomit. So it's not to be used regularly, just in small doses. But curiously, considering in the Ogham Grove it corresponds with Leo, and Leo governs the heart, broom has all sorts of benefits for the heart. It actually does regulate erratic heartbeats and will balance heart pressure and general all-round tonic for heart complaints, which is quite interesting. And also, along with it being symbolic of the golden hair of the goddess, it's a hair tonic and it's used to make the hair brighter and lighter. So it's quite interesting that it's got that connection with the heart and it's got that connection with the golden hair, you know, that there are its uses as well as its mythology. It does have, its seeds are like pea pods, but the seeds are toxic, so you don't use the seeds, but the flowers are used under careful usage for helping the heart with palpitations and balancing problems with the heart. I only found out about this today, but it's also used as the leaves can be used, the flowers and the leaves, as a kind of marijuana. But it's not so easy to do as marijuana. So you can't just take the leaves and flowers and smoke it. It doesn't work that way. You have to keep it for 6 to 8 months and let it go from yellow flowers and leaves to a kind of brown and moldy kind of substance. But equally, you're not to let it dry out. So it's got to be this moldy, moist thing. And apparently it goes through quite a process of smelling quite horrible. And then when it's ready, it smells nice, you know, and then people do smoke it shamanically to get a kind of marijuana hit. So that's quite interesting. The other things we've looked at on this wheel have had hallucinogenic qualities and so on. And it's curious thinking of Ceridwen's cauldron being created, a wine mixing cup, and all of the shamanic things she might put in the cauldron to help create a potion of inspiration. You know, it's interesting that these insights are there. So if you wanted to do that at this time of year, you have to plan it out. So the flowers appear in the spring. So you would have to gather flowers and leaves in the spring and then gradually look after them. Don't let them go dry, but keep them kind of moldy. And then come this time of year, you could smoke them. So it's a real faff. It's a real muck about to get it done. But who knows, the Celts and bards didn't do that. You know, the bards were, by the medieval times, connected with medieval monasteries and their herb gardens. They probably understood all of this stuff, and I'm sure the local midwives and herbalists understood it too. So maybe it's quite easy to keep something moldy and damp rather than let it dry. I don't know. Interesting anyway. So as broom is Leo, the obvious mushroom to choose was lion's mane, purely because the sun's in Leo, the lion. And lion's mane mushrooms, fascinating character. I think this photo looks like something out of Sesame Street or the Muppets. You know, it's like a real, expect it to start talking or something. Lion's mane mushroom has been used in traditional Chinese herbalism for centuries and centuries and centuries. And it's got lots of health benefits. It's one of the gifts from nature. It will grow in Europe. It does apparently grow in the UK, but it's quite rare. I've never seen it growing anywhere. But because of China, it's quite easy to order online if you want to try it. So online, you can get all sorts of lion's mane supplements, whether it's just the dried mushroom or in tablet form of just the powdered mushroom. But the many benefits then of this funny looking mushroom called lion's mane, it boosts the immune system, it repairs brain health, you know, it helps the synapses repair. So it's been good against dementia and Alzheimer's. It reduces anxiety in people, so it helps people with nervous dispositions. It kills cancer cells. You know, most of these mushrooms are quite wonderful. It protects against ulcers in your digestive system. It reduces the risk of heart disease. It's quite interesting with Leo governing the heart and lion's mane helping with heart disease. And it can also be used to manage diabetes. So it doesn't seem to be too expensive either. I saw a packet of dried lion's mane on Amazon for about £8. So that's not expensive. Some of these other mushrooms are quite expensive. They're like £30 or more. So lion's mane seems affordable and full of lots of benefits for people. That funny furry mushroom growing on the trees in China and stuff. So finally then, the flower I chose for broom is Meadowsweet. So in the story of Blodeuwedd, she was made from the flowers of oak, broom and meadowsweet. Now, oak does have a flower. It's a very tiny green dangly thing that gets overlooked. It's not an obvious flower. But the three ingredients of oak, flower, broom and meadowsweet, she can only be a summer goddess because they're summer flowering things. You know, she's not even a spring goddess. It's particularly summertime that her ingredients are made of. And there's another poem, I think it's in the Battle of the Trees, an extended version of it, where it's not quite clear if it's Blodeuwedd being spoken about or some other flower goddess, but it lists her having 9 flowers that she's made of. So it's worth looking into that. I haven't really looked into it myself, but there is a description of a goddess being created from 9 flowers. But in the story of Blodeuwedd in the Mabinogion, it's just oak, broom, and meadowsweet. So meadowsweet grows all over Somerset, all around the Somerset levels. It quite likes it by the waterside. It likes moist ground, and it's wonderful, fluffy-looking, creamy white flowers. Here's a close-up of them. And people drink it as a tea. As a tea, it's got lots of health benefits. Again, you can buy Meadowsweet tea in most Whole Food shops or online. So the benefits of Meadowsweet tea is it helps with colds, bronchitis, stomach upsets, helps with heartburn, joint pain and gout, and it's a general anti-inflammatory, and it improves the function of the liver. So there's a load of health benefits from Meadowsweet, one of Blodeuwedd's main ingredients. So there you go. I'll stop my sharing and we can talk about some of those ideas and insights about Broom, the Grail Maiden of the Ogham Grove. You can put your microphones back on.
How do you suppose anyone ever discovered that if you keep broom flowers mouldy for 6 months, you can make something psychedelic out of it?
Yeah, it's once it's properly mouldy, it gives you hallucinations, apparently.
How did anyone discover that?
I would like to say that it's possibly fermented rather than moldy, because there's many herbs that we ferment before we use them. It's a traditional technique, and I would be interested to know if there's actually mold on it, you know, which you could test for, or if it was a fermentation process.
That's interesting, because I was thinking about when we get into Virgo with blackthorn, there's some grains like rye that have molds that are mind-altering, aren't there?
Yes.
Yeah. But sticking with broom, yes, fermentation. And the website I looked at just talked about, it was someone's own personal experience of doing it, and they described it as being moldy. The main thing they were saying was that taking the flowers and the leaves fresh does nothing. There was no reaction from it, you know, so you've got to go through this fermentation thing for 6 to 8 months apparently to get it the way it was effective.
And I would just like to insert, I'm sorry, yet another thing. Ergot is a fungus, not a mold.
Okay.
So that is the hallucinogenic possibility for rye and other grains.
Thank you.
That's in the hand of Virgo. That's the star Spica is the week.
Yeah.
This is the Virgo.
So the brightest star in Virgo, as Franklin's just said, is Spica, and Spica means a grain of wheat.
Yes.
So in the story of Ceridwen chasing Gwion back, and they do the animal shape-shifting, at the end of it, he spies a granary floor and he becomes a grain of wheat, and then she eats him. So that's actually the Spica moment around this lunar time, if you like, you know.
An image that struck me, Yuri, is pouring out of the bag of Carnunas. It struck me that could very well be meadowsweet flowers, just by the shapes of them. And the harp of Apollo is, you know, the music of summer, all the birds and everything singing.
Yeah, yeah. Because one of the 3 birds is Lyra.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask you a question about making a broom? I'd like to make a broom. So I would gather long lengths of it and dry the Scotch broom, and then tie it as a bundle and use it as kind of a primitive broom with just holding my tied portion. I mean, I'm thinking you could put it on a handle, but the handle would be made of something else.
Yeah.
Example.
So what I heard is that traditionally the handle is hazel.
Mm-hmm.
And then willow is used to tie the broom to the hazel.
Oh, wonderful.
So you got hazel, willow, and broom for the Grail Maiden's doorstep.
How did you get a stake out of broom? Because you had to take the main branch.
Yeah, so I spent quite a bit of time on the island of Jersey, and in Jersey the broom does grow up to sort of 7 foot, 8 foot high, so you can take pieces that are a good 1.5 inches wide Yeah. Yeah. The only tree in the Ogham that was very difficult to make a stake from was heather. So I just glued lots of pieces together to make it. But I managed, for everything else, I managed to find a piece of wood at least 1.5 inches wide. Yeah, even ivy, because it's thick at the bottom of a tree.
Yuri, that one stake you have that's crooked, it has a bend in it. I noticed from when you laid yours out and took a photo. Which one is that?
That could be the heather, because it just does not grow straight. And I tried to get it as straight as I can. But having said that, my hawthorn is quite bendy as well. It was just a bendy piece of wood. Yeah.
The picture that you posted on the grove of all of them laid out, that was on a rug and not an altar cloth?
Yeah, what it was.
What a blessing.
That they had, I looked at it closely on the photograph, and you know that there's quite a common modern pagan symbol of a tree of life.
Right.
And it looks a bit like a pair of lungs, because there's the tree half and then there's the root half making a circle. So their rug was like that. Half the rug was the branches and the leaves, and the other half was all the roots. And they put
as above, so below.
Yeah, they put the stakes around that with a little cauldron in the middle and a flame.
And what a prognostication there that you went with the process. I'm so pleased to hear that, because the blessing of the goddesses there prior to you using it this weekend, coming weekend. That's wonderful.
There's been quite a lot of synchronistic things that have made me a bit nervous.
I love it.
One of them was the priestesses asking if they could use an Ogham set. I mean, but I was
a little nervous, huh?
Talking to Talia the other day, the planetary things going on right now are mind-blowing, because Venus is retrograde. But specifically on the 13th, when we're going to do the Ogham Grove ceremony, she's going properly occulted. That is, she's out of sight. So I think on the 12th, she's the evening star. And then on the 16th, she's the morning star. But this liminal space between evening and morning star is when we're doing our thing. And also that same day, the 13th of August, I only found out a week or so ago, there's a Roman festival called Nemeralia, which is basically the festival of Nemetona, Diana of Nemi. So that's coincided. That wasn't a contrivance.
She actually, Venus went underground yesterday.
Did she?
And then she'll conjunct the sun. So she's in the underworld now. And then she will, on the 19th of August, she'll begin her ascent as the morning star. So I think she conjuncts the sun around the 12th and the 13th.
Yeah, it's about the 13th.
Yeah.
That's what was shown in, I think it was Heather Ainsworth, and she showed where Venus was in the sky, conjunct the sun near Regulus.
Yeah.
Which is where we'll be on the zodiac, very close.
And this is a very unusual Venus retrograde and going into the underworld, because she's in the sign of Leo the entire time, which hasn't happened for a very long time.
I'm quite happy that it's a festival of Nemeralia, because that's Diana of Nemi, which is Nemetona indirectly, So for the Ogham Grove, aligning with a festival of the She of the Grove, that's quite a wonderful thing as well.
It's perfection.
We keep our feet on the ground.
Yuri.
Yeah. Hello.
Anu.
Hello.
Andrew.
Hello.
Hello. Me and Anya and Manu are here.
Hi there.
I thought that that there was someone made like a little grove of broom next to the house here where we live.
Yeah.
And they just threw some seeds down a few years ago, and like this year they've all like kind of established, and the color of them all when they were in flower was just, it was like the sun was like on earth. They were so bright and shiny, and the energy was just really like the sun, like full power. It was super beautiful. Oh, it was in spring.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yuri, could I
Yes.
sort of mention something about like this time of the year in terms of star law? I'm sure you know that. It's like the Lion's Gate, from what I know, has got to do with Sirius coming back, isn't it? Sirius coming back into the morning sky.
I'm aware that it's a thing, but I actually don't know a lot about the Lion's Gate.
Okay.
8:15.
Yeah. End of the dog days, isn't it?
To do with Sirius. Is it an Egyptian thing?
Yes.
It might be.
Yeah.
Ancient Egyptian.
Yes, it is the beginning of the Egyptian calendar with the appearance of Sirius. That's the new year.
Is it 8:15, Nanda? Is it 8:15, August 15th?
Yeah, that's probably that. Yes, that's the Lion's Gate, but that's in relation to Egypt and the appearance of the Egyptians. The Sirius was a very important star, and that was for them also the start of the new year.
It depends. I think it depends where you are in the world and how far you are from the equator.
Yeah, that's a specific degree. I think it's 33 degrees. But of course, it will depend a little bit where you're living.
Yeah, if you're at a higher latitude, it'd be different.
As I understand it, when Set cut Osiris into 14 parts and threw his body all over the world, the penis of Osiris fell into the Nile River. And Isis's sister Hathor became a cow and went and helped Isis to find Osiris's parts. And each time she appeared as Sirius above the city, the Nile would flood and the seed of Osiris would flow into the canals that they had cut into the desert, and all of his seed would fertilize the desert for the next year.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's always coinciding with the days of Leo.
Yes, it's always,
That's why it's called the Lion's Gate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the Leo Virgo cusp is the strength, the goddess and the lion and the beginning of the mysteries.
No, I actually see it as it starts on the 4th of July when the sun aligns to Sirius and lasts really all the way till it goes to Regulus. And this whole time between the moon and the sun signs, but different people say different things, but it's just a very powerful time when the being in the sign of Cancer, the moon, and Leo, the sun, and Venus went retrograde on the 22nd of July, the day that it just shifts, which they call Magdalene's Day. It is celebrated as the Feast of Magdalene.
It was the Feast of Mary Magdalene, wasn't it? That's when Venus went retrograde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lions will couple for 24 hours at a time.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
And that diagram we look at sometimes from Hadrian's Wall with the moon and the sun above Mithras, well, that cusp between the moon and the sun is 22nd of August, Mary Magdalene's Day, when Venus went retrograde. That was that moment. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So Yuri, why is that the fixed cross in astrology? What you call the royal cross?
Royal Star Cross.
Why do they call that the Royal Star Cross?
Because there's 4 stars that are called the royal stars, and one's in Taurus,